Someday, and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service for me. But until that day, accept this justice as a gift on my daughter's wedding day.
Can you believe it's been 50 years since we first met the Corleone family? 50 years on, The Godfather has taken its place high on the list of classic Hollywood movies. From Tracy Smith, we have an offer you can't refuse.
I want you to rest well, and a month from now, this Hollywood big shot's gonna give you what you want.
It's too late. They start shooting in a week.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
You probably remember the first time you saw The Godfather, and by now you can likely recite all the characters' best lines, from Clemenza's cannolis.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
To Sonny's bada bing.
You gotta get them close like this, bada bing, you blow their brains all over your nice Ivy League suit.
The film came out half a century ago, in March 1972, and when it did, the real mob was at the theater.
Why do you come out here in the rain to wait like this?
To catch cold, and if I have chance to see Marlon Brando.
The Godfather broke all box office records at the time. Not bad for a film made by a director who, at first, didn't even want to make it. Back then, Francis Ford Coppola was a young filmmaker in business with another young gun, George Lucas. But when Coppola first read Mario Puzo's book, The Godfather, he was underwhelmed.
And I thought, this is just sort of salacious, trying to make money kind of book, and so I disregarded it. When they offered it to me, I turned it down.
What changed your mind?
George Lucas came to me and says, Francis, we're going broke. They're going to chain the door for the lack of paying the rent of our American Zoetrope studio, and you have to do this. We have no other alternative. We need the money.
So Coppola took the job, framing it as a dark tale of family succession, and almost immediately began to butt heads with Paramount studio brass.
I was very young. I was 29. I had no power. They could easily push me around, which they did and tried to.
Coppola wanted New York stage actor Al Pacino to play Michael. The studio wanted anyone but, and considered people like Robert Redford, Ryan O'Neal, and Warren Beatty. They also wanted Sir Laurence Olivier in the title role, but Coppola held out for Marlon Brando. At 46 and in top physical shape, Brando didn't look anything like an aging Don.
That I cannot do.
But with some world-class makeup, he was able to transform himself into a character he knew just how to play.
We've known each other many years, but this is the first time you ever came to me for counsel, for help.
The cat was Coppola's idea.
It was a studio cat, and I just put it in his hand. He would never say, what do you want me to do? I joked that, like, if he's in a scene, Brando was in a scene, and a herd of buffalo ran by in character, he would say, oh, look at the buffalo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He would make use of anything. Yeah. He was great. He was a genius, no doubt about it.
Now you've had your drink.
And talk about genius. Robert Duvall, as family attorney Tom Hagen, did this scene in 2 takes.
They shot Sonny on the causeway. He's dead.
As always, Duvall had his lines down cold. Brando probably didn't.
He didn't like to memorize lines?
Yeah, well, he claimed that by seeing the lines, he could be fresher. I think it was a form of laziness. I mean, in the scene with Pacino out in the backyard, he had a great big sign in a tree. He'd look up at the tree and say the lines from off the tree way up, you know.
That's wild, but it just looks like he's thinking.
Yeah, well, you know, he was able to do that.
But even with all that talent, Coppola was in constant fear of losing his job. The studio hated his ideas, and some of the crew, he says, would badmouth him behind his back.
This one. All these people here, and you look so alone.
Well, that's really, this picture is how I felt during the picture. I was not a happy camper, as they say.
Coppola wasn't totally alone. He'd cast 2 allies as Corleone's siblings, James Caan as Sonny, and his real-life sister, Talia Shire, as Connie. But they feared the worst.
For those first couple of weeks that we were all shooting, Francis's job was in jeopardy.
Yeah.
I mean, and so my sister shouldn't have been on that set, I will tell you that. because it was very, very tough.
But a turning point came after Paramount execs saw the dailies for this scene, where Al Pacino, as Michael, prepares to kill two of his family's mortal enemies. The sound of the train helps build tension that you can feel and see behind Pacino's eyes until the moment he strikes. But for all the shoot-'em-up, some at Paramount worried that The Godfather as scripted wasn't violent enough. Coppola says they actually wanted to hire someone to pump up the action in the film, so he choreographed the violent fight scene between Talia Shire's character Connie and her no-good husband Carlo, played by Gianni Russo.
And I remember the plates were heavy, so I'd go, and it wouldn't break, and it didn't break. And so my shoes came off, and I kept just running around in the broken things because you don't want to take two. But it was intense.
Talk about intense. For the scene where Sonny is gunned down at the toll booth, technicians wired everything with small explosive charges called squibs to simulate bullet strikes.
On me, I had 147. Around the toll booth, it was 5,000.
Oh, Jesus.
Were you scared?
A little, but there were girls on the set, and I had to do it. I swear I wish I was lying.
The result was a shockingly realistic ballet of brutality that looked lethal and actually could have been.
It would blow a hole in your hand if you put your hand right here like that.
You can't do it many times,
You don't
right?
want to take two. That's a...
Take two?
No, take two
Are
with
you
that.
crazy?
No. You're still like an older brother. Like, did you notice that? Madon.
And the winner is Mario Puzo and Francis Ford Coppola for The Godfather.
The first Godfather movie won 3 Oscars, but it was bigger than that.
You come here unannounced on the day my daughter is to be married.
It changed our culture in ways that still resonate today, from The Simpsons to The Sopranos.
Is it true, Michael?
No.
But even if you've seen it 100 times, you haven't seen it like this for a while. The studio restored The Godfather in time for the anniversary, so now it once again looks like the vision Francis Ford Coppola went through a kind of hell to make.
I would imagine that the wounds have healed by now.
I don't know, the wounds really, I mean, do you have some episode in your life when you were a young woman that hurt you and you think about it? Does it not hurt you anymore?
No, you're right, it still hurts.
You know,
it still hurts?
Because we are creatures of feelings and those feelings get linked with something, and if you go back and think on that subject, it can break your heart again.
Coppola, of course, went on to be recognized as one of the greatest directors of all time, and he told us that ultimately he's glad he took the job. Aren't we all?
The Godfather was a new way to show an Italian-American gangster film with a different sensibility. So of course, always the movie you do that is something a little different is rejected in its own time, but years later it becomes the new. Now then Godfather becomes the standard to measure against. In other words, art is a ever-blossoming flower that we're all part of. It's a beautiful thing, really.